thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to Michael and the warm-up act of the Explorers. And now it's the main event. No, not at all. Of course not. We're all one big happy nickel family here at the Australian Nickel Conference lunch. My name is Dominic Piper. I'm the editor of Pay Dirt and Gold Mining Journal and your moderator for this session. Very similar to the last one, except as Bill suggested, this is more, I suppose, most of the companies here are more advanced than the three companies that were probably more early stage exploration in the first panel. And as Bill said, hopefully on their way to production. We'll find that out very shortly. I'll introduce our panelists first from Adair Resources. Is Matt Collins. Matt, thanks for joining us. Next to Matt is Scott Williamson, Managing Director of Blackstone Minerals. To my right is Edmund Ainscough, Managing Director of London Metals. I didn't promote you to chairman this year, I did last year. Did you? Yeah, sorry. And from Centaurus Metals on our far right is Natalia Strasvlova. Thank you, Natalia, for joining us as well. 4 projects in 3 different jurisdictions, 2 in Western Australia, 1 in Vietnam, 1 in Brazil. So we've got plenty to talk about, and different stages, different mineralisation, styles of mineralisation, and different stories altogether, really. So let's sort of set the scene a little bit. Ed, I'll start with you, if that's all right. It's been a few years since we had a proper presentation at the Nickel Conference, so it'd be nice if you can give us a little bit of a refresher of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'd love to. Firstly, just thanks, Dom, and thanks to Pay Dirt. It's a real privilege to be promoted from the Explorers panel last year to the Developers panel this year. Didn't drill a hole. And so nickel market can't be that bad, hey? So I'm really pleased about that. Do I need to press it to advance it?
Yeah.
So, look, we haven't still, I wasn't joking, we haven't drilled a single hole on nickel in 18 months. As the previous panel said, I can't remember who it said about brokers spitting, or not even spitting, on them. Yeah, I wouldn't want to categorise brokers quite that badly, as Cadman. But we did a lot of work, and it was low cost, and I'm really pleased to say that we updated a 2023 pre-feasibility study. The work we did was at a very high level, probably even feasibility study, but the elephant in the room, and we might talk about this later, Dom, is that obviously we had nowhere to take the ore, which is a bit of a problem. So as a board and as a company, we decided to set the study level at scoping study level, so we had to write our ore reserve off. No surprise, the market didn't even notice, which was great. I was expecting to get smashed. Smashed on the way up, smashed on the way down. But the work we did was pretty impressive. And look, Baker is 1 million tonnes at 3.3%. I said in a very excellent article you wrote, Dom, thank you very much, in the Pay Dirt magazine on the table. If you're going to compete with Indonesia and you don't have the scale of some of those bigger projects that the earlier panel spoke to, you really need grade. You really need 3% and above, and the only place you're going to get that currently is really in Kambalda. So Baker's 1 million tonnes at 3.3%. It's an awesome asset, starts at 100 metres. As I said, BHP, Nickel West, retains the right of preemption over all of our assets. It dates back to the 2001 sale. I was chatting with Jonathan Shellebert earlier. Dates back to that sale of St Ives back to Goldfields for about 485 million with Agnew. If they don't take up that preempt, you'd think that would get sold with the concentrator. If they do sell it, that allows them to charge 1% royalty. So Baker's really, really valuable. It's extremely low capital startup. It's fully permitted, ready to go. There aren't too many assets of that value. Even at the current nickel price, it makes $50 million, which is pretty impressive. When I first constructed this slide, I used to convert the nickel percent to gold to try and convince the more gold-focused brokers just how valuable it was. Back then it was 3 times. So, for example, 12.75 at 7% nickel, that would be like 21 grams, 12 metres at half an ounce. Now it's only like 1.3, 1.5 times. It really shows you how much nickel's come down and how much gold's gone up. But it's still pretty special. I mean, it's high grade, it's high quality. Both mines, both Baker and Foster in the study we did, can produce the best part of 750,000 tonnes at around 3%, and each of them can produce 21,000 nickel tonnes. So putting that together, it's very similar to what Mincor proposed back in the DFS from both Cassini and the Northern Kambalda assets prior to the takeover by Wyloo at about $800 million. So there's a huge amount of inherent value. And when the board meets and we talk about nickel, we all agree it won't rust. As you quoted me in the Paydirt magazine, it won't rust if it's leaving in the ground. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but nickel will have its day. A scoping study, just a quick update. The pre-production CapEx at Baker is pretty amazing. It's only 27 million. Both mines run for about 4 years. I mentioned how much nickel they produce. And as I said, Baker is economic, even at the current nickel price of 23,000 nickel tonnes, and that's purely driven by grade. And when we have somewhere to put it, and hopefully the green shoots that I see in the nickel market are that BHP is looking to sell things. That's normally a good time to buy things. They're generally pretty good at getting things wrong. So I think someone else said on the earlier panel that we're definitely at the bottom, that 15,000 is a floor price, and I think BHP looking to move things on is probably a bit of a sentiment changer. And I think we'll see some private equity come in potentially, or other parties who see a generational opportunity to pick up some high quality assets. And we're very, very confident that our assets will be a big part of however the cards fall in Kambalda, just because they're some of the highest quality assets in the state.
Great, thanks Ed. And there's a couple of points there I'm sure we're going to come back to a little bit later when we open up to a few wider questions. Scott, obviously you've pivoted slightly towards the Philippines and to copper in 2025, but you know you've still got the Toccoa Ban Phúc project in Vietnam, but you've brought in please explain what the situation is with that project now. How are you managing to keep taking it forward even though the main focus has shifted slightly?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. No slides for me. I only use Verify. It's been a big year for us, and so what we've done. So over the last 5 or 6 years, we picked up the Ta Quang nickel project in Vietnam. It was a previously operated nickel mine, the Ban Phuc nickel mine, and it operated a small, high-grade, massive sulfide underground mine from 2013 to 2016. And we came in about 5 or 6 years ago and we saw this very large ore body right next door that hadn't been drilled out. And it was a big disseminated system. And we drilled that out, 100,000 metres. We went through scoping, pre-feas and bankable feasibility study. And it was almost to the day that we put out the PFS that nickel started tanking. And what I can say is the Lassonde curve is real and it hurts. So it was unfortunate timing because as we moved into that developer phase, nickel unfortunately went out of favour. So about this time last year, I think the brokers actually might have been spitting on me. It was pretty bad. And so we started looking at, okay, well, how do we... Because as a junior, you're only as good as your ability to raise money. And for me... my salary is pretty big, so I needed to raise a lot of money. And unfortunately, I couldn't raise another dollar on nickel. Maybe a small amount, but not enough. And so we started looking at copper gold. But since we've done that deal, we've also pulled off the deal that we've been trying to pull off for the last probably year or two, and that was to bring in a partner. So I found a local Vietnamese conglomerate. This is a group that is well funded, and we didn't put this in the announcement, but they're looking to spend a few $100 million US, and they're going to build, own and operate the exact mine and refinery concept that we've been working on for the last 5 years. So that's great because the $100 million that we raised hasn't gone to waste, and so we'll be free carried at the mine. We're going to drop down to a minority interest, and this group's going to come in and move this mine and refinery into production. So they've got conviction because in Vietnam you can make good money at today's nickel price. So there's not an issue for us with nickel price. It was the sentiment, and And I think Mark was correct. It was the day that BHP and everyone started shutting mines, it killed the sentiment, and we just, unfortunately, we just couldn't access capital in the Western world. But we've now found a Vietnamese partner, and they're willing to put a few $100 million to work. So that's very exciting for us, and that's why we're still here, because we cut our teeth on nickel, and we're going to be a nickel producer.
Thanks, Scott. Again, like Ed, you've planted a few seeds there for our later discussion. So I'm liking building this narrative up. Matt, to continue that narrative, Ardea obviously have been well known to this conference for a number of years as well, and the project itself has been presented at this conference as long as I've been involved in it, I think. Can you give us a little bit of an update of where Ardea and the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project are today in October 2025?
Yeah, Dom, thank you. I suppose it's been a long journey. We've got a table of 7 people and some tired faces, some bags under the eyes at certain times. But we've made a lot of progress. Probably around this time last year would have been moving onto it, if I can find the right slides, moving into our formally executing, getting FIRB approval for our partnership with Sumitomo and Mitsubishi in a joint venture. They've invested $100 million into the project to move forward with a large DFS befitting a project of the size and scale of the Goongarrie Hub and the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. And we've been busy ever since. We've got some representatives from KNPL, the joint venture company. We have a team of about 50 people integrated at Kalgoorlie Nickel now, across the road from the Ardea office. We have some secondees from Sumitomo and Mitsubishi living in Perth full-time. We have a cast of thousands fly down from Tokyo on a monthly basis for our update meetings and our strategy sessions, and that keeps everyone on their toes day in, day out. The project is still from our 2023 PFS. I suppose our 2023 PFS demonstrated the economics and that we can survive the current nickel prices, and on the 2023 numbers make good margin at a $6,000 to $10,000 a tonne all-in cost. The challenge has been, I think and Matt might pick me up on this one, we basically announced our partnership with Sumitomo and Mitsubishi and the transformative nature of that for the project within 48 hours probably of BHP closing down Nickel West. Everybody has touched on. So there was very little positivity out of that announcement, but it has changed the business, it has changed the nature of what we're doing. I've got one slide on the structure. Both the companies now have moved to a joint 17.5% as we've hit our 50% spend on that $100 million DFS. DFS continues on track. We've had to push the completion date back a bit from the end of this year to probably the midpoint of H1 next year. But that's a testament to the work and the diligence that's been going on. And honestly, the 2030 number that Mark mentioned breathes heavy in everyone's mind. There's no rush. We shouldn't be rushing to push this into market. We should be doing the best job we can with the asset we've got and with the resources we've got to maximise what will be a 40-year project producing upwards of 30,000 tonnes of nickel and 2,000 tonnes of cobalt year on year for 4 decades in the Kalgoorlie region and beyond. So, thanks, Dom.
Thanks, Matt. It's it's a fascinating structure of a big conglomerate of Japanese groups to come in. Again, it's something I'd like to pick through a little bit further in a little bit. Natalia, thank you for joining us. The Jaguar project in Brazil, again, it's another story we've heard on the Australian Nickel Conference stage down the years. Can you give us a little bit of an update of exactly where the project sits right at this moment?
Thanks very much, Dom, and thank you for the opportunity to step into Darren's shoes. Very big shoes to step in more senses than one. He conveniently departed to London and asked me to help out. So I'll just start by giving you a very brief summary of where we are with the project. And the first thing is to remind everyone where we are. We are in Brazil. We are in the province of Carajás, which is full of mining giants. It really, truly is amazing. I've had the privilege of working for Vale for 5 years. And I've been to a lot of these mines, and I've been to Salobo and Sossego when they were still in construction. And it really is mind-boggling to see the scale of all of the developments there. I think if you put it together, just what you can see on the screen totals up to about 6 billion tons of iron ore, very high quality, high grade, about 3 billion tons of copper, also with some gold credits, amazing endowment. And Centaurus picked up the Jaguar project from Vale a few years ago, and I guess in a way we were lucky that we didn't have to discover it and drill for it. We've done a lot of drilling since then, but the discovery was done for us, and Centaurus now owns this amazing first-tier, enormous capacity project, 1.2 million tons of nickel in resource currently, and it keeps on growing. We have a very large team of very qualified geologists based in Carajás, not far from the site. We also have a big office, operational office in Belo Horizonte, and obviously a very capable corporate team here in Perth. So I guess we are one of the smaller giants in the province of giants, but we certainly have a very large development plan. It's summarized here. These are the results of the definitive feasibility study that we've completed and value engineering study that we finished just recently. The plan is to initially have 15 years of production from open cut. The current reserve utilizes only 400,000 tons of nickel from the resource base, so we still have huge potential to expand life. The current reserve doesn't include any nickel coming from underground, which is also about between 300,000 and 400,000 additional nickel. So the future is certainly a lot longer and bigger than what you see here. However, it's still going to be a world-scale project producing around 20,000 tons of nickel per annum and has enormous capacity for cash generation. You will see that the free cash flow for this 15 years of initial life is 1.6 billion. And most importantly, the payback is very quick. It's only 1.8 years. So we have a very exciting project. And the next slide, I think, is the key to understanding what sets us up separately from quite a lot of undeveloped nickel projects. With all due respect to my colleagues here, we are in the first quartile at $4.43 per pound on payable basis. We're making concentrate, so that cost is applicable to nickel and concentrate payable. Very low cost helps us obviously to attract interest. Low cost helps us to survive through ups and downs in the market and maintain focus on nickel specifically without feeling the pressure of looking to diversify into other commodities. I guess another important part of it is that we are benefiting from very low cost of power, and that's one of the key reasons why our costs are so low. It's 4 cents per kilowatt hour and 80% renewable, so it helps us to keep the cost down, but also gives us credits for carbon footprint, very large ones. I won't dwell on the permits. You will see that most of them are in place, and the ones that are not in place are coming very, very shortly, I believe. So we are pretty much ready to go. I won't dwell on all of these points because I've basically gone through them already. except for one maybe. As I said, we are going to be making nickel concentrate. And our concentrate is rather different from concentrates that are conventionally traded and people are used to see. We are going to be making a product which will have more than 30% nickel. And that kind of takes me back to old days at Western Mining, when a concentrate like that, and Michael can verify what I'm saying, will go straight into the refinery rather than the smelter, because it's such a high grade product. We've been lucky with mineralogy that allows us to produce this high quality product into the market. We are in the partnering discussions, and everyone will understand they are not easy, these discussions, they take time. It looks, based on the concentrate quality, that our likely partners will be the ones that have refining capacity, probably more so than smelting capacity, because it just makes a lot of sense. And you can imagine that there is not a lot of choice of groups around the world that already have spare nickel refining capacity to feed into the ESG markets, electric vehicle markets. But it's progressing well, and we are aiming for the second half of next year for FID, and it will basically take us into ramp up and commissioning towards the end of 2028 and into full production in 2029.
Thanks, Natalia. I'm going to stay with you because I want to ask a little bit more about that partnering process. What type of groups are you seeing? You mentioned the refiners. Is the interest that you're getting from traditional players in the nickel space, or are you seeing interest from new players? Explain a little bit about the types of groups you're seeing interest from.
I think it's a real mix of all of them. We are talking to people, large companies, traditionally in the refining business and also smelting business. For large companies, in this case, it's quite a challenge to justify buying a third-party concentrates quite often. So my personal view, and I'm not sure if others at Centaurus share it, is that our product is better fitting for refinery, and therefore there are quite a few newcomers into that space. Everybody is looking for long-term, stable, low-cost supply of nickel, not coming from Indonesia and not coming from China. So I think it's primarily groups like this that are thinking of building their own refining capacity and supply into that kind of market.
Thanks, Natalia. Scott, a similar question, really. You've obviously attracted local investment, but I mean, you first went to Vietnam on the back of, I believe, discussions you had with Korean groups. Is it a case of, outside sources other than China and more traditional sources starting to show an interest in the sector?
Yeah, it was definitely the Koreans that pushed us into nickel. We were dealing with a cathode manufacturer called EcoPro, and they talked about this move from away from cobalt into nickel. We actually were cobalt explorers previously. And I've done about 12 trips to Korea and still only $8 million. But it's unfortunately our asset was probably not quite big enough to attract the real big money like Ardea have. And so they are looking for multi-decade supply. And unfortunately, our ore body was sort of only 10 years or so. So that sort of changed our focus to smaller groups, and that's where we sort of landed with the local Vietnamese conglomerate. But yeah, they're all ready to take your offtake, and they're all ready to give you debt, but it's the equity piece that's the difficult part, and that's where it does take a lot of work. And a lot of soju, but it is worth it in the end, and our day is a great example of that, because the Koreans and the Japanese are partners for life, and once you put the work in, it'll pay off in the long run.
Matt, I'm sure you'd share that sentiment, but what about outside of Japan? Obviously, that's a strong relationship, and please talk a little bit about that. But I know the company's also been on a number of missions to India and looking at other markets as well. Is there a blossoming outside of those traditional markets?
Yeah, thanks for those kind words, Scott. Certainly the Japanese, I think similar to the Koreans in the mindset of they're looking to secure their industrial manufacturing base for decades to come. And they want certainty, they want supply. They've seen the last 20 years, Japan was one of the first countries to experience being cut off from rare earths. And that lesson has stuck with them. They've built their national stockpiles, they've got a strategy, and they're executing it, and they're funding it. So the Japanese, as Scott said, are looking, they want long term, they understand it, and they're willing to back projects to get there. Outside of that, on a delayed basis, other countries are probably starting to wake up to that as well, and other countries want to make sure they have long-term, stable supply chains that can feed their manufacturing base, feed their... Andrew was in the US 2 weeks ago, that was very defence-focused. Other companies or countries are very much just manufacturing focused, supporting their economy, supporting local employment, making sure they're not beholden to a third country for their economic well-being and safety. So it is growing. The Europeans are turning their mind to it more. More people are putting money on the table. The US defence focus is certainly, as some people have touched on, benefiting Canada and US-focused companies, but increasingly, the long-term view that Koreans and Japanese have had for a long time is spreading.
Thanks, Matt. Ed, do you feel like is there an underlying rumbling of sentiment coming our way? Are you starting to hear whispers either here or internationally in your tours and roadshows of an opportunity about to emerge?
Look, I think so. We've got pretty good connections. Ian Junk's on the table. Ian Junk's obviously Mr. Kambalda, Mr. Nickel, built 2 companies in terms of getting them operating during those WMC asset sales back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Ian and the founders of London Metals have got great connections back into China. So I think there's a lot of other aspects to the nickel market beyond what you see, the use or the availability of high quality, high purity nickel concentrate that comes from assets like assets in Kambalda is probably a slightly different market. So I think with BHP potentially exiting, we had discussions with people who were really only looking for kind of 5,000 or 10,000 tonnes of high quality nickel concentrate per year. So, I mean, a lot of the panellists are talking here and in previous panel about very large deposits. And it'd be easy as a very small company with potentially quite small assets in Kambalda to think you really have no part to play. But I think there's a lot of aspects to the nickel sulfide space that people don't see. There's a lot of strategic value in the sort of concentrates that a company like London Metals could produce if we can get our ore through a concentrator. So yeah, we're seeing some green shoots. The date that everyone keeps talking about is 2027, which ironically obviously is when BHP said they'll review their business, but all the media reports would suggest that they're fast-tracking some of the inputs into that review now. I mean, 2025, 2026, if they are going to run a sale process, you think that will have crystallised at some point, either this year or next year. So, yeah, 2027 seems to be like that kind of year where maybe things are just going to change, and people always call nickel fickle. It is, but it's not fickle at the moment, right? It's pretty boring. It's just bouncing along at $15,000 a tonne. So maybe we are, like I said before on the last question, that if BHP are selling, maybe this is the bottom, and it's green shoots from here on in.
We see in copper a situation where, after years of just bouncing along and projections of supply-demand imbalances, all of a sudden in the last couple of months, a few major operations come offline for various reasons. Is there an opportunity or a likelihood that changes in Indonesia, for instance, or changes in other big markets will affect overall supply, therefore opening up an opportunity for these smaller projects, as we're seeing a little bit in copper at the moment.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, obviously the earlier panel spoke about attending that conference in Jakarta, and the message I took away from that is that they're not making much money. So if they're not making much money, the Indonesian government's not collecting much tax, you think there'd be only so long that you could allow investment to keep potentially destroying your environment and your social framework and not actually have anything to put in the treasury. At some point you think that will reach a breaking point too. It's always darkest before the dawn. I think I spoke to you outside. You're a Middlesbrough supporter. I'm a Colchester United supporter. Obviously, most of the people in the room don't even know where those places are. But, you know, when things are bad, you can always think they're going to be bad forever. And I said to you outside, my team won 6-2 at the weekend. And I had to, double read that result because, I mean, they haven't scored 6 goals for decades. So, you know, as soon as you think things can't change, you tend to get surprised. And the key for the board of our company, and I'm sure all the other companies on the panels and the management teams, is to be ready to respond. You can't anticipate. I think Cadman said you can't make the rules. You have to play within them. But when the rules change, you have to be ready to respond. And one of the best things about we've done is during the good times, we got Baker permitted, we finished all the drilling, we got Foster permitted to re-enter, and they're ready to go. So actually, we just need to sit back now and be ready to respond when it changes, and I think it will change.
Thanks, Ed. We've got...
Can I just add something?
Absolutely,
quickly?
Natalia, please.
So I think one thing that everyone agrees on is that it can't be much worse. And I think that's what Ed was trying to say, that even in Indonesia, it can't get much worse. They need to make money. They need to be able to fix environmental issues and still make money. So what we don't know is when. It's going to happen, and we just don't know exactly when.
And we're seeing a more resource nationalist approach there. They've reduced the renewal licenses in a whole host of commodities to 1 year. They've clamped down on artisanal mining in the tin space. They've clamped down on environmental issues in the coal space. It feels like there may be something moving there as well. I've got some more questions, but I feel like that you have not done enough work today, so I think I'm going to open the floor up to some questions before I ask my last couple. Has anybody got a comment or a question to make? There's a young man over there. It might be his first time at the Nickel Conference. I'm not sure. If you could just let us know who you are in case anybody doesn't know. Yeah,
just for the record, I want to tell Bill that I wasn't at the rendezvous in 2000. I'm a bit younger than that, but Julian was there. Yeah, great guys, and look, and thanks, Peter, for 30 years, and we can remember some actually tougher years than where we are now. I think that the positive vibes coming through is really good. I'll just reflect a little bit, and then I'll ask a tough question. Back in the sort of 2014, 15s, we were all talking EVs, and we were saying, bugger Indonesia because the EV market's going to take all the nickel it can get, and I guess that's been somewhat dragged on with more hybrids becoming more popular, and of course the iron lithium batteries also making an impact. I think it's very tough to ignore China because BYD's, and I can remember talking to the CEO of BYD back in the day, I think Joe was with me, and in his private jet, they've overtaken Tesla as a major source of EVs. So Europe and North America are really, really not putting their piece into, the EV and nickel. If you've been to North America recently, I don't think I saw an EV in actually Colorado or Utah. I think they were all 8-liter pulling RVs bigger than your house. So I don't think there's much hope up there. But coming back to China, though, I think that we would be naive to ignore in all aspects of commodities, rare earths, etc., that China is still our partner. And I think that until Europe wakes up and actually takes product, but I did hear the last couple of days that there was conversations with some smelters in, the old Finland sort of Harjavalta stuff, looking for products. So But to the panel, and maybe I'll start with Scott because he's pivoted into gold and deep porphyries, which is probably something really good. But on the concept of the EV market dragging on and that most of the nickel from Indonesia is stainless steel, unless the HPAL comes up, and I agree costs are going to go up. I'm very buoyant about nickel, and I think that what we've done in Australia is basically sold nickel down the gurgler. Canada hasn't done that. They've actually supported nickel, although some of it's polymetallic and its copper's done well and PGEs. But I think that the Nickel West sell was probably the last straw where investors said, well, if they're selling, and I was shocked that they did that, but let's say that private equity will pick that up for a song, if they can deal with the rehab. But from a panel point of view, and start with Scott, because he's sort of been in there hard yards, all that $8 million worth of jets, wasn't it, flying around Korea? Give us your view of where you think EVs are going, Scott.
Yeah, so I think if we look at our concept or our refinery, we've always said that we're going into the EV battery chemical space. And I still believe that if your nickel is lower CO2 footprint nickel or green nickel, then it will end up in an electric vehicle. And I think that eventually there will be some sort of premium or because the green nickel is hard to find, and those premium brand electric vehicles will be very focused on their brand reputation. So I think that, if our nickel will go in an electric vehicle because of the longer range and the premium performance that comes with that, but also the low CO2 footprint. So dirty nickel, most likely will go into stainless steel because there's no, you're not too worried about the nickel in your cutlery.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to, you did broach, and as Ed did as well, so I think it's probably, if Indonesia was one elephant in the room, the other one is the future of Nickel West and the infrastructure there. Ed, I just did a head count earlier on. There's about 100 or so people in this room. How much would we each have to raise through London to get you to take over Kambalda and get things started again?
You mean how much we'll have to raise from this room?
Yes.
To buy the concentrator?
Yes.
Well,
and can you do it?
It's only, supposedly, it's only media reports at the moment that it's all for sale. And we're kind of orbiting. Obviously, we'll be extremely interested if it is. We'll be up to our armpits in it if we can compete with some of the bigger private intergenerational wealth that spent a lot of money, is very long nickel in the Kambalda Wichamultha district. But I mean, obviously, I think people don't necessarily appreciate, and I saw an article with Bridget Carter and Data Room in the Australian yesterday that for the first time kind of broke out the concentrator in Kambalda from the rest of the business because it doesn't fit. BHP, WMC before them now do not own any other assets in the Kambalda district. They don't own any resources. They have an option on the nickel on Goldfields ground and on our ground, but they don't own any resources. So that concentrator does not fit into the old integrated Nickel West business. So that kind of begs the question, if they sell Nickel West, would they sell the concentrator differently or separately? I think that article talked about the concentrator being converted for gold, which would break my heart, because obviously, although I love the gold price being at $6,000 an ounce, and by the way, Lady Herial, our little gold deposit will make $45 million at that price in the next 6-8 months. But at $6,000 an ounce, it means the gold company's got a lot of equity to deploy to BHP to pick up that concentrator and repurpose it. So, like, I really don't follow the electric vehicle space to answer Dan's question. I haven't really followed the Nickel West sale because it really doesn't apply for us. I'm very interested in the concentrator. And we just got to see what pans out. But like I said, that 2027 really does seem like a bit of a cliff. And I think regardless of how it all washes out, as I said before, you just got to be ready. You've got to have your things permitted. You've got to be confident about the costs and the grades and the recovery. And we've done all that work. And there's not a lot more we can do. We can play by the rules. We've just got to find out what the rules are when it comes to what BHP are contemplating.
Thanks, Ed. We've got time for more questions. No, there's all that bottle of wine being drank and nobody's been brave enough yet to ask another question. Natalia, I'll come back to you. I mean, what's your feeling? Ed mentioned a couple of times this 2027 cliff, springboard, whatever it may be. How does that affect a company like Centaurus? It's operating in a very different part of the world, but I suppose in a similar part of the market.
Well, as I said, I think everyone agrees that it will happen. I just don't know when. Well, hopefully it is 2027 because it will mean that we're going to be developing and building during the time when the prices are on the rise, ready for us to commission. So if that's 2027 is the magic day, then that's great. It doesn't make our partnership discussions any easier right now, but I think the whole change in the sentiment to more positive certainly does. I think what also makes it a bit more challenging time-wise is because a lot of people who are interested in our concentrate are still making decisions about their own businesses, and that takes time as well. So I'm a big believer that timing in life is a very important issue. So we just know that Centaurus's project is so strong that it will survive, and prosper.
Thank you, Natalia. Well, we're almost...
Kind of just comment.
Oh,
I
yes.
actually think the springboard is now, and the reason is, and I'm not an economist, but I don't think we've ever seen a scenario where precious metals have spiked so aggressively and base metals hasn't followed. So copper is about to rip, and nickel will follow it, and then even zinc and lead may even have a run. But the whole base metals complex is about to rip, and I'm pretty confident of that. And that's because of the debasement of or devaluation of fiat currencies, and hard assets are where you want to be. So get long commodities, any commodity, even oil. Because they're all going up. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. And that leads us nicely into our last moment. Bill mentioned the Rendezvous and his first appearance at Australian Nickel Conference. Mine was in October 2005. And as Michael and Alan said, that PEDA is not only is it a fantastic up-to-minute magazine, it's also a great journal of past years. So I thought I'd go a little digging, and we usually ask our panelists at the end of the session. It was a 2-day conference in those days, so we asked them what the price would be on the 31st of December 2005, and you'll even like the names in this group of panelists. So Martin Pyle predicted, this is all US dollars, 12,100. Vanessa Torres of I think it was still CVRD in those days, in 2005, predicted 12.5. Chris Bonwick, 12,700. Gets stranger, Mark Ashley, 13,000. Kerry Hermanis, 13,200. David Moore of Minkoff fame, 13,500, as was Brian Hurley. So that was in 2005. By 2010, David Moore was still there. He was predicting 29,000. These were the good days of nickel. David Singleton was 22,000. And Brett Muller was 19,000. Then we move to 2020. Are you ready, Dan? The actual price on October the 6th, 2021 was 18,800. Dan was very negative. He predicted 17,500 US. Mark Wilson was even more negative at 13,600. Alex Dorsch, who's not here today, predicted 22,500. And Tony Rivera, who soon forgot about nickel in favour of lithium, predicted 18,600. And Hayden Bairstow, who was at Macquarie at the time, 16,800. So Tony Rivera got that and he sold out anyway. Then last year, on this very panel, Dan Locker, you said the price would recover from the current $18,000 a tonne to beyond $20,000 US a tonne. You didn't say when, though, so I mean, we can still hold you to that. So all that leads to, and are we ready, Rhonda? Are we ready to record this year's predictions? So we're going to start with Matt, because he's on our far left. Matt, what's the date today? 9th of October, 2026. The LME nickel price will be in US dollars.
I'm going to be pretty dull. I'm going to say 16,000 US dollars a tonne in 1 year's time.
Okay. Thank you. Scott, you got, remembering what you've just said.
Yeah, after what I've just said, 25,000 US dollars.
US.
US dollar.
Jeez.
You're not going to tell us the exchange rate, though, are you?
I hope it is. I'm going to be negative because I don't think it will wash through that quickly. So I'm going to say 14,848. But the gold price will be 7,000 or 8,000 Australian. And we're going to bank like 50 million from Lady Harriet. So I won't care what the nickel price is.
Natalia, it's on you.
I'd be more positive, I think, 18.5.
18.5. Thank you very much. I'm going to stick with Scott's 25, because that means with half a chance that we can go back to a conference next year rather than just a lunch. But thank you very much to Matt, to Scott, to Ed and to Natalia, and thank you to everybody here. Please, there's plenty of time. I don't think we have to be out of the room anytime soon. So please keep enjoying each other's company, keep talking about nickel. And other than that, you'll be able, if anybody missed it, the live stream has been up. The live stream will stay up overnight, so you'll be able to go back and watch it, and then we'll have it on our YouTube channel as well for any of your colleagues who missed it. Please feel free to share that link around when it comes around later in the week. Other than that, thank you very much. We'll see you here next year, hopefully for an entire nickel conference. But if not, on behalf of Bill and Paula and Angelique and Michael and all the rest of the team and all of our sponsors, thanks again, and we'll see you next year.